Ready?
Hi, my name is Anushka Jha. I'm a sophomore in Edina High School, one of the organizers of this forum, and I am the student board member with the League of Women's Voters, Edina. The League is co-sponsoring this forum with the Edina debate team. We would like to thank Julie Bascom-Rogers and Susan Clark for the support they have given us. At this time, please silence your phones if you haven't already. And this event will be recorded and placed on the League of Women's Voters Edina's website. The site name is lwvedina.org, as well as the Edina debate website.
Hi, my name is Danielle Schmidt. I'm a senior at Edina High School, and I'm also one of the organizers of this forum. I'm a captain of the Edina debate team, who is a co-sponsor of this event, and I'd like to thank the Edina debate team for supporting us and giving us the tools to put together events like this. Additionally, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for supporting me and Anushka in this endeavor, the students at Edina Public Schools for helping write the questions, and the candidates for being so gracious in agreeing to participate. With all the thank yous out of the way, we'd like to introduce our candidates with the parameters of this forum. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for opening statements, and then we'll move to questions. Then they'll have 1 minute for questions. We'd like to begin with Ms. Neville for opening statements.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Regina Neville, and I'd also like to thank the Edina High School debate team and the support of the League of Women Voters for hosting this evening's forum. And thanks to all of you for attending and watching the recording to become better informed about this year's school board election. My husband Tom and I have lived in Edina for 22 years. We're the parents of 3 children, all of whom are proud graduates of Edina High School. Serving on the board is about doing what's best for kids, both academically and in support of their personal development to reach their full potential. I believe that every child matters, that all students and staff deserve a welcome, safe, equitable, and loving environment in order to thrive. I've consistently served Edina Public Schools in multiple leadership capacities for over 20 years, and I'd be honored to serve in the year ahead with the experience that I've accrued. I have 12 years of school board service. I've acquired knowledge about school finances, policy, and collaboration. I have many years of classroom teaching experience, and I've led the Edina Ed Fund as a co-chair to enhance funding for mental health and wellness and literacy development. You can learn more on my website at nevilleforedina.com. And please vote for me on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Neville. We'll now pass the floor to Ms. Jordan.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for having us here tonight. I'm a proud 25-year resident of Edina. My 33-year career in education includes 25 years as a Minnesota public school teacher, and the past 8 I have spent as an independent education consultant, partnering with educators across the nation and on an international level, developing best practice solutions in education. I have a BA in elementary education, and I hold a master's degree in psychology, emphasizing on child development. And so I understand education and I understand students. We're fortunate to have an amazing community in Edina, and I am running for school board because I want to ensure that the future generations of Edina students receive the same level of high-quality education that my 3 children had. My last student graduated only 1 year ago, so I experienced all that happened in publication before, during, and after the pandemic, not only as an educator, but as a parent of an Edina student. My work with building, district, and state-level educators nationwide gives me a unique view on what is working and what is not in education. We do a lot of things great here in Edina, and our school district is one that repeatedly receives state and national recognition. We have a really strong strategic plan, and we are heading in the right direction. I can help guide us in that plan with the experience that I have working with school communities across the country on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Jordan. For our first question, our students have expressed a desire to understand your decision-making process. How has your involvement with Edina or Edina School shaped your platform and your decisions you'll make if elected? And the first question will go to Mrs. Jordan. Ms. Jordan.
So as I mentioned in my opening statement that I work with educators all over the country, and I've been a Minnesota public school teacher for the majority of my career. And I chose to raise my family in Edina because of the outstanding schools. I know that my students had an amazing experience here, and we have some room for improvement here in Edina. There have been some things that have changed the past couple years, and we're still one of the best around, but I want to ensure that we continue that path of excellence that we always have had. And like I said just a moment ago, my experience working with educators all over the country really brings a different perspective that we don't have on the board, and so I will bring that perspective to my decision making and in conversations we have on the Edina School Board.
And Ms. Neville?
Thank you. And to clarify, this is the response to the prepared question, correct? Or a leading question, and that will be later?
That'll be later.
That'll be later. Thank you. So if you could please repeat the question in this context.
Of course.
Thank you.
How has your involvement in Edina and Edina schools shaped your platform and your decisions will be made when you be elected, if you be elected?
Thank you. So the experience I've had in Edina has been valuable both from having taught in Edina Public Schools. My kids have been here. I've volunteered with the school district. And then having the opportunity to gain multiple perspectives from different leadership experiences has also made a big difference. Some of my deepest learning has been as the Edina representative for our Edina students who attend Intermediate District 287. So from that experience, I learned a lot about the decision-making process and the value of equity, the importance of having everyone at the table who's impacted by a decision, and the requirement that we have a plan or at least advice on how to redirect if there's an impact that's going to have some unintended consequences. So getting the right people at the table, hearing from multiple voices, and understanding the impact of the decisions has been extremely powerful.
Thank you. The school board decisions have a large impact on students, but students under 18 are unable to vote in school board elections. Do you think student voices should be better incorporated into decision making, and if so, how? And to Neville first.
Thank you. So yeah, this is an excellent question, and absolutely, student voice makes a difference. It's essential to the board's process, and the experiences and point of view play a critical role in determining policy and the direction of the district. So students are always welcome, and they regularly do choose to address the board with questions, which was part of the October 17th board meeting when we heard from students who are part of Project Earth. It's also essential to incorporate student perspective during the process of developing the policies. And one example of that is Policy 506 that students helped advise on student conduct and discipline. An important part of student participation that informs the board is when they participate in leadership activities. Anytime students have the option to develop their points of view and communicate that with the board, it's something that is really impactful for the board's decision.
And Ms. Jordan?
So yes, 1,000% the student voice matters. And I have had the opportunity to speak with several student groups through this process. Some of them are sitting in the audience today. And it's been so enlightening to me to hear the amazing ideas that you have. As Regina mentioned, one way that students can be involved is by attending the board meetings, and they were given a voice at the most recent board meeting, and it was really wonderful to hear that voice and hear them champion their cause to the school board. Another thing that I think is important is for school board members to go and meet with student groups throughout the year. All the school board members sit on a committee, and those different committees have members that can go and meet with student leadership groups throughout the year. Like I said, I learned a lot just from meeting from the students that I met with at the high school, at the middle school, and I've even talked to some elementary school students. And everything the school board does impacts you all, and so your voice is something that needs to be continued to be heard.
Thank you. The high school has recently instituted a new attendance policy. For those unfamiliar with the attendance policy, we'll provide a brief definition. The attendance policy places students with 3 unexcused absences and or 9 excused or exempted absences on an attendance contract. This new policy also places a stricter emphasis on attendance, specifically around test taking, with students unable to retake missed tests if they score below 75% on their makeup. How do you think the school can better support students who may have a greater number of exempted absences, such as student athletes? Beginning with Ms. Jordan.
So I think that one way that we can support those students is to make sure that teachers have available times for those students to connect, like office hours, or I know that there are win times at several of the schools that those students can engage in. I think the use of technology certainly is helpful, so students can connect with their teachers and maybe see video recordings of classes that have happened. I know that a lot of times we have to follow state guidelines too for absence. As a teacher, I had to report certain absences beyond certain days that were given to me by the state. But I think certainly the use of technology is one way that we can add to those students engaging in classrooms when they are missing class.
Ms. Neville?
Thank you. The attendance does make a difference. We know from a lot of data that when the more students are in school and that they're present, it does benefit learning. But the example that's given in the question is a good one to just make the note that it's not the same for every student. Their lives, their activities don't always match up with the same as the school calendar or the school hours. So while the policy is important, it's also important that we have some flexibility of time and space, so that opportunity to meet with students one-on-one and figure out what is the best match for that individual. Some of it can be an online learning experience. In terms of retakes, it really depends upon the situation. So having that personal experience and relationship with the individual will be the best way to determine how to best meet that student's need. And it's the outcome that's important. What's best for that student and their individual development.
Thank you. In an article by the Edina High School newspaper, Zephyrus, about an offensive video created by Edina High School students that circulated around last year, the author described the relationship between the high school administration and marginalized students as defined by lack of trust, and detailed how students of color are oftentimes not taken seriously when they have complaints about discrimination. What, if any, actions do you believe that should be done to better ensure students of color's safety and trust with working with the Edina public school system? Beginning with Ms. Neville.
Okay, thank you. The incident that happened last April, and sadly, these aren't isolated. There is something that continues here that unfortunately many members of our community experience on a regular basis. They're unacceptable, they're harmful, they cause a lot of hurt. So in terms of lack of trust, this is something that needs to be built over time, and this is an opportunity for conversation. Part of what's happening is definitely the right direction. Our superintendent and the mayor are partnering for the One Town, One Family conversations. We'll have another one in November. But changing policy is important. We've already had some student input on the student conduct policy, but we need to continue to review that. Likewise, the district can strengthen its language with an equity policy. We need to clearly state, here's what we mean and what we stand for in this community, and then back that up by examining what does it mean to have a welcoming environment? How do staff and students feel safe? How do they feel that they belong here? So continuing those conversations is the right direction.
Ms. Jordan.
So I agree with Ms. Neville that this is certainly not a topic that's unique to Edina Public Schools, unfortunately, and this is something that we need to continue to evaluate. We can start with holding everybody to a high standard of respect and responsibility like we always do in this community. But as far as making sure that voices are heard, one of the things that I heard loud and clear from the students I spoke to over the past several weeks is that they wanted to see more transparency. So allowing students a place where they can share those concerns, making sure that we understand one another's cultures, and making sure that there are consequences for that kind of behavior. That is not something that we accept here in our community. That is not something that should be condoned in our community, and there needs to be consequences for that kind of behavior. So I think continuing the respect and understanding and making sure that we all hold each other to a high level of respect is something that we all need to do.
Thank you. So, on a related topic, many students at Edina schools have observed and commented on the lack of diversity in the teaching staff. What, if any, actions do you believe should be done to increase diversity in the staff at Edina schools? And this one will go to Ms. Jordan first.
So as a public school teacher myself, I taught at a school that was 75% students of color, and most of our staff were not teachers of color. And so this is something that I've experienced firsthand. And so while I think it is very important that we recruit and retain diverse educators, I also feel that it's important that the teachers that we have here that are high quality also understand the multiple cultures that we have in our school and understand how to relate to the different cultures that we have in our school. And this is something, like I said, I experienced personally. I went through training from Dr. Shiraki Hawley, cultural sensitivity training as a teacher, and I just think that we need to continue to reach out to and recruit the highest quality teachers that we can have.
Thank you. Ms. Neville?
Thank you. It does make a difference to have a staff that reflects the diversity of our student population. And Edina has made some important strides with our leadership team. And we need to add more staff of color throughout all of our building sites. So part of this is recruitment, making sure that we advertise in the right places, that we welcome and make sure that that invitation to apply to Edina is available. But retention and support is equally as important. I've also had the chance to work with Dr. Shiraki Hawley. I've worked with Resma Menakim for 2 years at Intermediate District 287, specifically on this topic. And that includes building relationship with all staff coming together to talk about our community, what helps us feel supported. And when that community is supported, that's supportive for students. So continuing to build relationships, mentor, make sure that our culture of Edina schools can change and adapt for the staff, as opposed to just asking that everyone change in one direction toward what Edina has been.
Thank you. The shortage of bus drivers has had a significant impact on students in Edina public schools. What steps should be taken to address this issue? And the first one is to Ms. Neville.
Transportation's key. If we can't get to school, it impacts families, their work lives, it impacts learning, and it just adds to the stress of a day. So yes, there is a bus driver shortage. This has been the case for a while. Edina has been advertising and recruiting. In terms of ways to attract more bus drivers, part of what Edina has already done is we own a lot of our own fleet, and we have an excellent transportation center. That's helpful. But the other components to look at are what is available in financing, what's available for that wage and for the support of the individual. And then from there, it's looking for different creative opportunities to determine how can we get everybody to school safely and on time.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan?
So providing public transportation for our students is something that is very key for our families. As a working mother myself, I know that that was something that I relied on for all 3 of my children. And one thing that when my kids were younger, they did was they staggered start times for schools. I know that the elementary schools, I think, still do that, and that sort of addressed the shortage. I know that we have had an issue retaining bus drivers for a long time, but I think, like Regina said, making sure that we are paying a fair wage, that we give them fair benefits, that the kids are monitored and safe on the bus, so it's also a safe environment for our drivers to be in while they're paying attention to the road, and driving our students to and from school is something that's very important as well.
Thank you, Ms. Neville. Did you? Yeah.
Sorry. Students across the Edina public school system have reported mental health struggles, whether it pertains to test anxiety or growing stress levels. How do you plan to address the growing mental health needs of the Edina student body? We'll begin with Ms. Jordan.
So this is one thing that came out loud and clear when I met with several students. In fact, it was one of the first things that they brought up when I met with them. And when I asked what was adding to their mental health, I expected to hear a lot of things about COVID, and what they said to me was really surprising. They said, we need to be heard that there are more ways than just academics to be excellent, and the pressure to be academically great is so great in this district that it's really taking a toll on us. So letting kids know that they don't have to take 5 AP classes to be wonderful. Allowing them to have creative outlets, I think, is a great place to start. Allowing them to know that if you want to go into the trades and you don't want to go to an Ivy League college, you are still a wonderful person and you can still be great. Providing maybe more social work and counseling options would be another option, because I know that right now our counselors are very overloaded and kids know that they're there, but they can't get an appointment for 2 weeks, 3 weeks out, and so making sure that we have those resources for students to tap into when they have somebody, when they need to speak to somebody, is really important.
Ms. Neville?
Mental health and wellness is one of the key topics that is important across the country. There's a lot that we need to do in Edina. The stress and anxiety that students felt and have reported existed before COVID, but the COVID experience has certainly enhanced that. Some of our partnerships have been important to address this issue. With the Edina Education Fund, as I had the opportunity to co-chair that, we partnered with students to create the Heal Together campaign, and funding was raised to make sure that we have Fraser counselors at all 10 of our sites, and then continued funding is working toward increasing that number. That's important, but it's also important that we make sure that people are aware of their options, that they know they're supported. Reducing stigma is significant, and then also just making sure that people feel the right and have the opportunity to balance their schedules, because we need to define success in multiple ways. It doesn't have to happen all at once or on only one particular definition.
Thank you. When gathering the questions, we frequently saw that environmental aspects are important and heavy on students' minds. How do you think Edina Public Schools can better emphasize environmental education in all grade levels? We'll begin with Ms. Neville.
The students have been great advocates for climate awareness. The Project Earth group has been incredible to make the school board aware of the needs of our district and the community. And we also have students who've been terrific in promoting recycling, responsible use of our facilities, of our renovation when things are changed. How can we make responsible choices? Part of this starts with policy, and this is an opportunity for the district and the board to review policy. What do we state as being important for the goals of the district? It doesn't mean it can all happen right away. We need to have a plan so that funding can be put in place. Policy is also a place to begin in terms of education and awareness, stating this is a value, and it's important that students have this opportunity for learning about how to support their environment, be responsible citizens. And when we start that at an early age, it's the best way to make sure that we have a lifelong practice, and that will make a difference for generations.
Ms. Jordan?
This is a topic that is definitely front of mind with the current generation of students, and it's really great to see that students are so involved in this. This is a wonderful opportunity for the school board and the schools to partner with the city of Edina on their climate goals as well. I know that at the elementary school we have green teams that are focusing on composting and recycling and other processes, and that could align with the city's goal of diverting the majority of our solid waste from our landfills and helping accomplish with that goal. So partnering with the city on that, I think, is something that's really important. Also, we have several schools that are Energy Star schools, so let's examine what they're doing at those schools. What is working well? How is that helping reach the city goal? And how can we help other schools become Energy Star schools in our district? They're doing some wonderful things. Let's learn from them, and let's continue to partner with the city on how we together can work, because the schools are actually some of the biggest consumers of energy in the entire city. And so partnering with the city on their goals and making sure our students are involved in that is key.
Thank you. So many students have observed broken instruments in their classrooms. Do you think EPS is adequately addressing music education in the schools? And if not, how can it improve the musical education? And it first goes to Ms. Jordan.
So broken musical instruments?
Yes.
Okay, so I was not aware of this. But I know that when my children were here, Edina Public Schools had an amazing band program. I know that we are fortunate that a lot of people can afford their own instruments, but certainly if that's something that our students are not having access to, I don't think that finances should be a limitation to students being able to participate in programs. So if that's something that requires funding, we need to look at where we can get that funding to make sure that students have that creative outlet and are able to participate in the arts and band and whatever it is that they want to excel at.
Ms. Neville?
Well, we do have an excellent music program, and just at our last board meeting, the district was recognized, I believe, for the 5th time consecutively by Schmidt Music for having outstanding education throughout the entire district. So it's something we can certainly be proud of. But in terms of music and the instruments, what I know of our departments is that they do teach respect and care for the instruments. This is part of the music instruction. So I would need more information as to what's happening for the cause of the instruments being broken. But in terms of repair and opportunities to provide instruments, the partnership with Edina Give and Go has been just outstanding to create some options to close the opportunity gap. And funding musical instruments for students has been a key part of what they do. But if instruments are being broken, it's something where I would need some more information to learn about what's happening and what may have changed that has led to that occurring.
Thank you. So with 94% of teachers paying for their classroom school supplies, according to the National Center for Education Statistic, how do you think EPS can better support teachers to get the funding that they need? And this will go to Ms. Neville first.
Okay. Teachers do invest in the classroom with their personal funds. I know I can speak from experience that that is part of what I still do when I'm working with my students at Valley View. But I also appreciate and am grateful for the support of the district where they can. In terms of supplies, what has happened, I know this doesn't cover all of the gaps. Sometimes our PTOs have been really, well, they're often very generous and providing some opportunity to close that gap for teachers so they don't have to expend personal funds. Partnerships with the Ed Fund are another opportunity for that. But I think another conversation to be had is how can we pool our resources to reuse what we have and possibly redistribute some of what we have. So some of this could be addressed with communication to make sure that people are aware of here's what's needed for a particular classroom and how can we share those resources in the best way possible.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan?
As I said earlier, I spent 25 years as a public school teacher, so funding my own supplies was something that I have experienced personally as well. We are very fortunate in Edina to have amazing fundraisers that happen here. I'm always overwhelmed by the amount of support that we get from our community at our local fundraisers as opposed to some of the other districts around the Twin Cities area. So that's one area where I think if teachers are needing help with supplies, maybe some of those funds from fundraisers, carnivals, PTOs could be diverted that way. Also partnering with local community organizations. We have Staples, OfficeMax, Target. Target is a locally based company. They're happy to partner with schools. So reaching out to our community members to make sure that all of our students and all of our staff have the supplies that they need, I think is a really great way to fill that gap and help teachers.
Thank you. Around this time last year, underclassmen students were caught cheating on tests in the AP World curriculum. Addressing the issue of cheating in general, do you think the school board should be doing more to address cheating in both high school and middle school? If so, what? We'll begin with Ms. Jordan.
Well, absolutely, students should not be cheating, and they're really hurting themselves if they are, and we know that as adults, if you're not really learning the content and then you're not building on your skills when you move on to the next level. But I think that, yes, absolutely, that should be something that is addressed. I know with technology, sometimes it's getting a little bit more difficult to address those sort of things. Students have access to more ways that they can get information, but it's something that should absolutely not be allowed, and there should be consequences for that kind of behavior.
Ms. Neville?
Well, I agree. Cheating, of course, isn't allowed. It hurts the individual who has chosen that path. It's also unfair, and it's unbalanced to the rest of the students who are equally victims of what has happened. I know we have policy, of course, that prohibits cheating. It's important to start by reviewing that policy. Is the language as current as it should be? But then taking a look at implementation, which is not directly a school board role, but making sure that we have the tools in place to make sure we can monitor the cheating. Another question I would ask is, why is it happening? Is there, what is the pressure that is being felt that is driving an individual to make that decision? Is there another type of support that might be needed earlier in that individual's or group's academic experience to help them understand what they need for their own pace of learning and discourage them from taking that route?
Thank you. In schools across the nation, including Edina, we have seen a rise of underage vaping in schools. How should the school play a greater role in the prevention of underage vaping, and not just the high school, but as the middle school as well? We'll begin with Ms. Neville.
I know the policy has been updated to include language regarding vaping, regarding just some of the different alternatives that are available for nicotine substances. It starts with an education campaign, and I would encourage that an age-appropriate curriculum be started at the elementary level so that students understand the health risks, that they have the facts. And I know that when students have information, it's easier to make a better decision. Another part of that training for kids is just understanding the experience that they have with their friends. What kind of pressure are they under when they might choose to make that decision? So just for support for students so they feel that they're empowered to stand on their own with the decision that they know is healthy and that is right for them. So the education begins at an age-appropriate level early, and it just needs to be woven through curriculum all the way through grade 12.
Ms. Jordan?
I know that this is an issue with especially middle and high school students, but the bottom line is it's illegal, right? It's not illegal for you to purchase those kind of products unless you're 21. And so, first of all, that's something that needs to be addressed. It's not something that's legal for students to do, and it shouldn't be allowed on our school grounds at all. And I know that there is policy against that. Also, it does start with education. We need to make sure that our students know that just because they're flavored and candy and smell sweet, the damage that that's doing to their lungs can hurt them long term, and not only just affect them with their lungs, but it will actually affect their brain and affect their ability to function when they're older. So making sure that they're aware that it is a very, very dangerous thing to do, and it can have long-term, irreversible, harmful effects, is something that needs to start in the health classes in our schools at least in the 5th grade, if not a little bit sooner.
So, thank you. Critical race theory has become an important topic in schools across the country. We know that this is a controversial topic, so we'd like to provide a definition from an independent news site called EdWeek. The core idea is that race is a social construct, and that racism is not merely the product of an individual bias or prejudice, but also something embedded in the legal systems and policies. Using this definition, are you in favor of making critical race theory a part of the curriculum? And we'll go to Ms. Jordan first.
So this has been a talking point that has been very divisive, again, not just in our community, but in the entire country, and it raises a lot of emotion when it's brought up. I feel very strongly, and so would most educators, that our students need to be taught history, all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly. We need to understand that sometimes it's uncomfortable, but we should never take a look at that in a manner that doesn't take into account historical context, and it should always allow for our students to have open dialogue and critical conversation around this. Right now, this is not something that is a part of our EPS strategic plan. It's not something that's a part of our curriculum. And I think that we need to continue to focus on diversity and making sure that we all understand one another. But where I don't agree with is when we focus on group identity instead of individuality, which critical race theory does in some ways, because I think that it doesn't help every child be their best, and it doesn't focus on the strength of every child.
Ms. Neville?
Well, critical race theory, as I think a lot of people know, it is not part of school curriculum. It is not part of what's taught, and it is a divisive term. So it can become a flashpoint for individuals to engage in a conversation and to engage in a conversation with their own script and to stop listening. What is important in our school system is to engage in conversation about equity, to acknowledge that racism is real, that there are people who feel that impact on a daily basis as part of their lives. So for all of that, that includes learning, it includes unlearning, it includes examining history and current events from multiple perspectives and multiple sources so that we can better understand what has and what is happening, because this is a present-day experience. It's also important to build relationships so that we can understand each other better and to have a personal change so that we better understand the impact of ourselves in the world and the world on us.
Thank you. So in 2022, we've moved away from online school post-COVID-19, but as we approach winter, there may be days with severe weather. Should schools continue to use online schooling tools during circumstances such as snow days? If so, how can we facilitate those days for the teacher and student success? And this goes to Ms. Neville first.
There has been quite a change in what I grew up with as a snow day. There's just this idea of a snow day as a break, and breaks are important. So I want to honor the fact that when you get a break, and especially a spontaneous one, it can be really beneficial. But it's also important to have that opportunity for flexible learning, to be able to flex the time and the space. So online technology has improved. There are some ways that we can use this, particularly with bad weather, so that everyone can stay safe. They don't have to travel in dangerous situations. So strengthening how we use online learning, continue to talk about the best method for delivering curriculum, making sure that everyone has the resources that are appropriate for online learning, and then balancing that, because there is no one-size-fits-all for either online or in-person learning. So it's important to continue that conversation so we know the right time and place and delivery.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan?
So I think we all would agree that being in person matters, and but we do live in Minnesota, and so we do have weather that prevents that a lot of times. And that being said, there are, I believe, 5 days built into the school calendar to allow for those days, and it doesn't affect student contact time. You don't need to make up that time. And sometimes it is great to have a break, and it's wonderful for the students to get a mental break and a physical break from the rigor that we ask of our students in Edina Public Schools. But if we get in a situation where we have depleted those days that are built in for snow days or weather days, then I think online learning is an option, but it has to be something that is going to be effective. I know that in my own house, sometimes I saw my students who were really good students, but they zoned out once the Zoom was on and their teachers were talking, and it really wasn't an effective use of time. So making sure that we're delivering online education in a way that's effective and is useful to students.
Thank you. The Edina High School has recently underwent significant construction in their parking lots to improve traffic flow, but students have still observed issues after the school day, including the ability to leave the lot and to obtain a parking spot. Do you think Edina Public Schools should has some more work to do in improving access to parking at EHS, and how can we manage the issue? We'll begin with Ms. Jordan.
So I've experienced the Edina High School parking lot, and I have to say it is a terrifying experience in the afternoon. I know that when my students were in school that we partnered with the church across the street, and that was an option that my students had, and that was actually a really great option. And they actually preferred that option, so they just had to walk across the street. They didn't have to get caught in the gridlock of the school parking lot coming in and out, and they really liked that. I think encouraging carpooling as much as we can to reduce the number of vehicles in the parking lot, and I know that's something that already happens, but continuing that, giving an incentive to have more than just one or two people in a car is a way to reduce that. And like I said, partnering with maybe the city to allow some street parking and the other areas like the church to continue to allow students to park there is a great idea.
Ms. Neville?
Yes, it is difficult to navigate that parking lot. I've been in it many times, and I time going over to the campus every day with that in mind. So the district has explored different opportunities for changing exit paths, adding different paths outside of the campus. They're not currently feasible. It doesn't mean it will never happen, but it is not currently an option. The expanded options at two different churches across the street from the school has made a big difference, and as has expanding parking lot space. But I agree that carpooling is essential. I think it could also be beneficial to look into, if we have bus drivers, but an additional activity bus. So just another opportunity for shared transportation, as well as, possibly changing some staggered end of school times. We do that a little bit. We already have a staggered end of day for some students to leave the school if they need special needs transportation, but there might be an opportunity to just stretch that out so it's a little easier to navigate.
Thank you. Recently, Edina Public Schools has begun to place a greater emphasis on alternative paths, such as trade schools, for students graduating. How can the Edina Public School system better facilitate education surrounding students' options in all grade levels? We'll begin with Ms. Neville.
It's fantastic to have an expanded emphasis on more opportunities for students. So we have some great partnerships with some of our technical schools. Some of that is available through Intermediate District 287. So I think this begins with making sure families and students are aware of the options. and how that can flex with the school day. Part of that goes back to transportation. We have students who share part of their school day with Edina Public School and then going to Hennepin Tech for some classes and back again. But we need to make sure that people know it exists and know how to get there. The additional part of trade schools is just building that in, starting with middle school, because as students are navigating, here's what their curriculum is going to look like. Again, they need to know their choices and what kind of paths can that lead to as they navigate them.
Ms. Jordan.
This is something that I've actually worked with schools across the country in helping to develop, and they do it actually very well. There are several states across the country that require their students in their junior and senior year to take alternative classes, like what would it be like if I was an electrician? What would my career be like if I was a carpenter, a nurse, a teacher, a computer programming engineer? And these are things that are built into their day, and they are required to take those classes, which is amazing. I think it would be great to see that here in Edina. Superintendent Stanley also thinks that would be great to see that in here in Edina. She would love to see students be able to leave Edina High School with a certification of some sort and having those life skills. I think we need to further develop our partnerships with our trade schools. 287 I don't think is a really viable option for most students because that's an alternative district. So bringing those opportunities more into our school and making it an option for students to explore those careers while they're still within the walls of Edina High School is something that would be amazing to see.
Thank you. We have seen efforts to limit access to books in libraries and schools across the nation. Where do you guys stand on this issue? And Ms. Jordan first.
Well, I believe very strongly in the First Amendment, and I believe that we need to have access to content. Now, I think that we need to have age-appropriate content in our schools, and we need to make sure that what we're putting in our elementary schools is content that's appropriate for them in our middle schools and high school. But I don't believe in censorship, and I don't believe in burning books or taking books away or anything like that. I think that it's important that we expose students to age-appropriate, content-appropriate literature at all levels that offer diverse perspectives and offer varying levels of challenge as long as it's age-appropriate for our students.
Thank you. Ms. Neville?
I also agree that there should not be book banning. There should not be censorship. There is a choice that families have, and parents should be able to make that choice individually with their students, but that choice should not impact the rest of the students in a district. So yes, age-appropriate materials available at each of our media centers and in each of our buildings. No book banning, no censorship.
Thank you. Now, adding on to your what parents should or should not be able to control, should they be able to control the curriculum that is taught to their students? If so, what control should they have, and how should they exercise that control? And Ms. Neville.
So the curriculum is decided partly by state statute, the Minnesota Department of Education, and then the Edina School District has the opportunity to add to that curriculum for what is felt to be helpful for an Edina degree. So you need to comply with state of Minnesota and then also with our school district. We rely on our staff of educators who have the training in this area to select that curriculum. There's certainly advisors and people who can share in that decision-making process, but people who are trained in taking a look at what is nationally normed, what is going to best prepare a student based on current data and best practice. So there are a lot of factors that go into play. In terms of individual parent choice for their own individual student, that's an opportunity that they can exercise, but it's, again, for their individual family as opposed to a district-wide decision.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan?
So I've been a part of curriculum selection as a teacher, and as in my current role, I help guide districts in best practice in education. So this is something that I'm very familiar with, and there are a lot of things that are dictated by the federal and the state government. But that being said, local school districts do have some control over what is taught and what curriculum is chosen in their school that best suits them. Most school districts have the curriculum posted on their website for parents to be able to review, and that's something that I think needs to happen. We need to have full transparency, and there are options for opting our students out of certain things if a family chooses to do so. But I also think that if there are a number of community members that feel like something is not appropriate or have a question about something, we need to provide a forum for them to ask those questions so that there is understanding. I think that a lot of misunderstanding leads to some of the things that we're seeing right now with parents being upset with curriculum, and so that transparency and a place for parents to ask questions is something that needs to happen.
Thank you. On the subject of parents, do you believe that Edina schools allow for enough parent-teacher conferences? Additionally, what can the school board do to improve the parent-teacher conference process? We'll pass this off to Ms. Jordan first.
I think at the elementary school, parent-teacher conferences were great. They were scheduled. You had time to go in to speak to your student. By the time I got to the high school level, it was sort of, if something is wrong, just talk to me. When I engaged in the 10-minute round-robin conferences when my kids got to middle school, I don't think that's sufficient. It was something that was really frustrating for me as a parent. So going back to more scheduled conferences, I know that gets more difficult at the middle and high school level because they're teaching multiple sections of classes, but having a way to maybe get a better read on students than just the round robin, you can wait in line, have 10 minutes with the teacher, I think is something that we really could improve on, and just having a more open communication between the parents and the teachers when it comes to middle and high school. Like I said, I know it's more challenging. At elementary school, you have 30 kids, it's a lot easier, but opening up that communication at the middle and high school level, I think needs to improve.
Ms. Neville?
So we've made a lot of improvement with the parent-teacher conference model in that we now have more online opportunities to have a dashboard to view. Students can view their individual grades. Parents have access to knowing what kind of progress is happening in regular intervals. So I think it's important to shift the focus from, one, we have the measurement of the grades, but shift it to what other student needs might exist and are they being met. And that would look like a different model. I think a lot of our teachers are very successful with building that relationship with families so that they can reach out to them on a more regular basis. So instead of just adding more specified conference dates, we want a more fluid communication pattern throughout the year. But with that, we also need to keep in mind just time and resources, respecting the educator's time. They have, a limited amount of time during the day. I would say the majority of our educators are incredibly gracious with expanding that time, but it does help build the relationship.
Thank you. AP exams are something that's been touched on a few times during this forum already, but a more specific question. Many Edina students currently take AP courses. Do you believe that Edina offers too many AP courses, not enough AP courses, or just the right amount? How can we better support students in AP courses as well? We'll begin with Ms. Neville.
The AP curriculum is a great option in Edina, and it's part of what makes Edina an excellent district. It's part of what's measured by organizations like Niche when they're considering, is this a school that's sufficiently preparing students for college? So with that, do we have the right number? I think that right number is usually changing. I think that more choice is better. So if we have the opportunity and the enrollment to support the courses, then that's the direction that we should be taking. But it's also important to have that conversation with students and educators as to which AP courses are best for students right now. So what we offered 5 years ago might not be the right match for this year or for next year. So more choice is better, and then continuing that conversation about which and how many courses are offered needs to continue.
Ms. Jordan?
I think continuously evaluating which AP courses that we offer is something that's important as well. it is something that my own children took advantage of and were lucky enough to knock off a few college credits, which I was very thankful for. But it's not something that's required of students either, and that's one thing that I think is really great. So if it's something that a family feels their child is ready for, the child feels that they want that challenge, it's an option for them, but it's not required. I also think expanding enrichment courses just beyond AP courses is something that we should continue to look at. I know my own son participated in Project Lead the Way. That was an amazing opportunity for him. I know that we're partnering, there's students who are working on designing things for the space station. That's another way to expand and excel. So a lot of partnerships like that, I think, is another great way for us to look at just beyond AP to give kids those experiences and a little leg up before they go out into the world to their post-secondary education.
Continuing on the AP course subject, in particular, should Edina High School continue to offer AP European History as an alternative to AP World History? And please elaborate. Ms. Jordan?
Yeah, I think that it's good that we include a multitude of courses. And one thing that I actually heard when I spoke to several student groups is that they wanted more options to learn about history just beyond the United States history. So I think that giving those options for diversity and learning about other histories beyond our own and allowing students choice for that is something that is wonderful and we should continue.
Thank you. Ms. Neville?
AP Euro is a phenomenal course, and it's very well taught. In terms of having it in place of AP World, I'm not sure exactly what the intent of the question was as to whether it should be the credit. Is it about the credit?
Or should we even have that option in place? Or should we just do AP World History?
Just do AP World. Okay, thank you. Because I know the district has had the question regarding alignment with state standards specifically on that topic. And is that what you were asking about, or no? We don't know. Yes? Okay. Sorry. I just wanted some clarification. Alignment with state standards is important. So if we have alignment of the courses, and then that's great. And we can also, continually evaluate the courses to see what changes need to be made for that alignment. I think it's also important that students be encouraged to have a multiple background, a perspective. AP Euro is phenomenal, but having another perspective and encouraging background on other continents or that global perspective that AP World offers is important. So some of it might be through AP, but some of it might be through other courses, so it's not just one Eurocentric lens.
Thank you. So for our next question, myself included, we have seen many well-loved Edina teachers retire in the last 2 years. What can Edina do to convince teachers to continue teaching? And this question will go to Ms. Neville first.
We have amazing educators, so I agree, and it's so difficult to see them retire. They also earned their retirement. So support for teachers and educators is important. In terms of encouraging them to stay longer, many do stay long past the time when they would be eligible for retirement, and that's fantastic. The strength of any district is in having a nice balance of instructors who've been here for a long period of time and making sure that we constantly have new educators entering the system. So in terms of support, educator wellness is key. They need that mental health and wellness support the same as students. So doing what we can as a district to support that will make a big difference. And then just continuing to provide mentorship and bring more people into the system is also important. But we do appreciate the educators.
Ms. Jordan?
As an educator who left the classroom, I think that I can say that one of the reasons that I left the classroom was because I was burnt out. I felt like I wasn't getting the support that I needed. I was coming home at the end of the day, and my own children were getting the worst part of me because I had given everything to my job. So yes, support of our teachers is key. And we do have amazing teachers here in Edina, and every educator goes into education because they give, it's really a calling for most people. people and they give everything they have to their job. So making sure that they have the support in the classroom in the form of paraprofessionals, and making sure that they have mental health support, that they get enough time for planning, that they get enough time for professional development with each other so they can make sure that they're delivering the best practices in education that are out there, and just making sure that they have all of the resources that they need so that they feel supported and don't become burnt out like I was.
Thank you. One of the issues that we saw come up time and time again was student safety in Edina schools. What, if anything, should be done to make Edina schools safer? We'll begin with Ms. Jordan.
So I think that we've done a lot of things in the past several years to secure our buildings, which I think is a really big step. I taught in an area where we actually had lockdowns quite frequently before there were the double entrances and things, and it was a very scary thing. And so I know that when I walk into an Edina school, I'm happy to check in. I'm happy to have that double entrance and show ID if I need to, and all of that is great. But I also think that we need to make sure, again, that some of this goes back to the respect of each other and holding each other to a high level of respect to one another, and making sure that students are not fighting in the hallway, that they're understanding each other, that they are not disrespecting each other, because when you have that mutual respect, there's not going to be that unsafe environment within the building, and then having those safety measures in place for people coming into the building, I think, is also important.
Ms. Neville.
Edina has done a lot to change the physical structure of our buildings. That's thanks to our community and the support of the bond referendum that has allowed that to happen. So there is a safer building structure. With that, we need to have safe protocols that are followed, because even with a safe structure, we have to know what to do and when to do it. Beyond that, there's different kinds of safety. So there's safety from specific violent incidents that can happen, but there's also safety in knowing that you're in a welcoming environment that is supportive, that is free from any kind of racial aggression. So I know some of our staff and students don't feel safe for different reasons than just a threat of gun violence or something else. So building community, addressing equity is key, building strong relationships, making sure that we have restorative justice practices, that we have opportunities for healthy conflict resolution is all part of keeping our community safe.
Thank you. What lessons do you believe Edina schools should have learned from the pandemic? If something similar happened in the future, what could Edina schools do better? We'll begin with Ms. Neville.
What we learned during that pandemic is that this is a strong community and we've got each other's backs. One of the things I was most proud of was just the response of this community in terms of figuring things out that we hadn't navigated before, figuring out meals. Just the Ed Fund and our meal delivery. I had the opportunity to just literally pack grocery bags to give to families and recognize there's food insecurity, not just during the school day, but some people have that a second meal or a weekend meal food insecurity. I think we got to know each other better. So what I'm hoping we can retain as we move into a post-pandemic time is, one, look out for each other. Make sure that everyone has their needs met. Embrace the technology that works, and be willing to adapt. Make sure that we don't just sit with a one-size-fits-all education, that we have an open mind for looking for our gaps and figuring out how to support one another.
Ms. Jordan?
I think that what we learned is that connections matter and relationships are very important, and not only for our educators to connect with their students, but for our students to connect with one another. The mental health of our students is something that is concerning post-pandemic, and that's because they were isolated from one another. If you look at just the hard numbers across the country, the states that shut down for a short period of time, the students had almost no learning loss. Minnesota, as a state as a whole, we fared toward the bottom because we had one of the longest times out of school with no contact face-to-face. So being in person matters, having those connections with our educators matters, and connecting with family and students matters. It makes a difference in our education. It makes a difference in the success of our students.
What are your thoughts on special education IEPs, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and the basic services offered for children with disabilities at Edina Public Schools? And this will go to Ms. Jordan first.
I think in some ways we do a really great job with this. In Edina Public Schools, I know that we have a great partnership with Special Olympics that has been highlighted, and that is an amazing program that we have, and I think we should continue to do more of that. I have a daughter who's dyslexic. She had a 504 plan, and honestly, it was really hard for her to get services in Edina Public Schools. Being an educator, I was fortunate enough to know how to navigate that system for her. And once she had a 504 in place, her teachers were amazing. But getting to that level of service was really, really challenging. And I see parents all the time saying that it's too expensive to have my child tested. The support services are hard to navigate. And so I think we're getting better with that. There's a lot of state mandates about dyslexia and other services that are out there that are really helping with that. But I think that we could do a better job of helping families navigate that process so that their children can get the services that they need.
Thank you, Ms. Neville.
Special education is a hallmark of public schools because everyone is welcome in our public schools and they all have a right to have their services met. Navigating that is often complex, as anyone who has had part of that experience can tell. I also have a child with ADHD, dyslexic diagnosis, and it could be a lot to try to navigate that system. Here's where I think Edina has improved and where there's opportunity for more growth. The Special Education Parent Advisory Board is phenomenal. So it has grown, and just making sure that parents have a voice and an opportunity to advocate for their students and for the programs has made a difference. FastBridge is something that is new to the district. It allows for an opportunity to do testing earlier and to identify a need at an earlier opportunity so that students can get the services they need when they need them. We have more teachers with letters training to get professional development to better be prepared to meet the needs in the classroom. Thank you.
So how do you plan to hit the ground running in this one-year role? And to Ms. Neville.
I've had the opportunity for 12 years of school board service. I've served in Edina for 8 years on the board, and I've also been the Edina representative to Intermediate District 287, which is our district. It is a collaborative with which we belong. I was there for 9.5 years. With the overlap, it's 12. And I just stepped aside from there in June. So I've been engaged consistently for the past 12 years with leadership in school districts, with liaison positions with our schools, our elementary, middle, and high schools. I've also worked with the Edina Education Fund, so I feel that I'm ready. I know the protocol, I know the language, and I love this district. I know that it has excellence and opportunities for improvement, and I'm ready to support that.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan.
So as I said earlier, my youngest child just graduated a year ago, so I've been very active in the Edina Public Schools as a parent for almost 20 years. And in my job, I travel weekly across the country, and I meet with educators all across the country. So I think that that will give me the opportunity to be able to just jump right in. Part of what I do in my job is that I meet with school boards, and I help them with their strategic plans, and I help them develop curriculum, and I do audits on their testing to make sure that they're utilizing the data that they have to the fullest potential. All of those are skills that we need as a school board member. I possess those skills. I can jump in and bring those skills right away to our school board. I don't think that learning the protocol is going to be that big of a lift because, like I said, I work with school boards all over the country every single week.
Thank you. Those are all the questions and issues submitted that are on the minds of Edina students. We'd like to thank the students for submitting, those who are currently attending in the audience, and our lovely candidates for participating. Those are all the questions for tonight. You can rewatch the taped recording on lwvedina.org, and you can vote in the school board election on November 8th. Let's give our candidates a round of applause as a thank you for coming out tonight.